The player versus player side of StarCraft 2 is stellar. Things have come a long way since the original Battle.net and Brood War ladder system, and esports, formerly a niche, now bearing StarCraft 2 as one of the foundations of competitive league championships in gaming. I won't go in depth in this topic because I don't particularly care about it that much. When I play StarCraft 2, I play it for the campaign, and hey, perhaps that makes me a chump, but when I play World of Warcraft, you'll never see me in a battleground or arena, or even on a PvP server, because that ain't me. Similarly, I don't like laddering in StarCraft 2 because it's not bad or anything, but because it sends unpleasant tingles up my esophagus, all over my keyboard. GG, you destroyed my whole base with 2 stray Zerglings because I panicked! Don't take this the wrong way, StarCraft 2's PvP is the best part of the game, nobody can deny that, and you'd be a fool to. But is the other side of the coin being neglected? So let's talk about the PvE aspects of StarCraft, specifically the changes made in the campaign between the first game and Wings of Liberty. In the first game, the dialogue was conveyed at the start of every mission through a fancy sci-fi Skype call. You had 4 talking portraits giving expository speeches about how this person betrayed this other person, you killed my girlfriend so I don't like you anymore. Phoenix has been killed again, but he reincarnated as an ostrich, so we're all good. Now, one of the biggest rules in the writing industry is to show, don't tell. And if you don't know what that means, basically instead of telling the audience what happened, you show it instead via cinematics, via description. You could even use static illustrations to convey it. StarCraft 1 told the story through dialogue and then showed certain segments of the story through pre-rendered cinematics. StarCraft 2, on the other hand, showed everything. You've got pre-rendered cinematics, real-time, full-scale cinematics, in-game cinematics. It's Warcraft 3 on steroids, the only exception being snippets of in-game portrait dialogue, which is so few and far between that I barely even need to mention it. By all accounts, the storytelling should be vastly improved because of this, but is it? And therein lies my first argument. Show, don't tell is not a rule, it is an abstract guideline. Make no mistake, a lot of effort was put into the StarCraft 2 campaign to be as flashy and impressive as possible, while maintaining the storytelling quality found in the original StarCraft, and likewise Warcraft 3. But something must be said for the minimalistic narrative when you're stuck at a bottleneck, and you must find out a way to tell the story without relying on fancy graphics. Or take a movie for example. Does a big budget movie make it better automatically than a low budget one? Can you make that call? Is it the resources you put in, or can storytelling at its basic form surpass the technology used in conveying that same story on a grand scale? People don't realize what a burden it is when you have the potential and resources to create anything, because when you do, and the pressure is on, there is every chance your creation will fall into a pre-existing formula which plagues most modern forms of entertainment. Whereas when you have nothing and you are bottlenecked out the arse and all you can rely on is your own ingenuity, entrepreneurialism and creativity, that is when you innovate. The story in Wings of Liberty tried to handle too much, alright? It was on a quest to continue a story 12 years old, to be accessible for a new crowd, to convey itself in a graphically impressive engine. But in doing so, it lost the fundamentals of how a story should be written and expressed. Was there even a theme in this story? Redemption? Self-discovery? You can find these in the most basic fairy tales, but what about here? Rayner tries to stop his girlfriend being evil, even though he said he'd kill her, by using a magic thing, which is never explained. There are no other turning points. All of 2 plot elements culminate in the final cinematic. 2! A betrayal and a salvation. But that's an insignificant payoff compared to the hours and hours of dialogue and events and missions and all this other shit, which clearly only served as padding for 2 minutes of nice looking pre-rendered shindiggery, all of which could have been seen as a 4-way Skype call, which is all I ever wanted. Though I must admit, even with its flaws, StarCraft 2 still manages to convey a better story than most movies or video games these days. And a better love story than Twilight.
Oh shit.
I love you, Sarge.
The reason I'm explaining all of this is to lead into my second point, which is the reason I made this video in the first place, as you can tell by the video's title. And that is the future of PvE in the RTS genre. Right now there is no PvE longevity. You are limited to casual, normal, hard or brutal difficulties and achievements. There is nothing beyond that, and I only mean storytelling wise because obviously there are custom maps and versus AI maps. Now for all intents and purposes, this is fine. This is how it's always been for every single RTS game, or at least most of them. But that's the thing. That is how it has been for those games, and yet there's potential for way more. What about spreading the story content over a large amount of time? Kind of like patches in WoW, where after a game is released, you still get content, even if it's minor. And I emphasize minor here because it's not like you're paying a monthly subscription for StarCraft. But more importantly, and this is the part I feel very passionate about, what about supporting amateur coders and storytellers? The tools are there, the map editor is there, but there's no promotion of custom created campaigns. There is some good stuff out there. What immediately jumps to mind is StarCraft Insurrection, which was a player created campaign licensed as an unofficial expansion for the original StarCraft, complete with voice acting and 30 campaign missions. It crafted a self-contained side story, not related to the game but set in the same universe. What this does is outsource the game to others, letting them build the world even further while increasing the longevity of the game itself to the people who bought it for the campaign. Think of it like spin-offs for indie devs, where they can use pre-existing tools and pre-existing method of gameplay as a way to showcase their ability to design video games and tell a story without having to worry about building it from scratch, which not only earns them recognition but supports the game's existing player base. With the impending release of Heart of the Swarm, we know from the beta that Blizzard is encouraging people to make their way from campaign to AI games, to unranked games, and then to ladder, as if this is the only possible endgame and what you should be shooting for. But I must pose the question, should RTS focus more on PvE endgame longevity? And I don't mean focus on this instead of PvP, I mean, shouldn't they coexist? I know that if they included mini campaigns in the time between expansion releases and sold them as microtransactions, hell yes, I'd buy them. Man, if they had a cheap subscription model and continued to support the PvE scene for that entire time, I would happily put that money down. At least then I'd know that after I finish the campaign, there'd be something for me to do. Imagine cooperative campaigns, story-based missions that require coordination and teamwork, significantly more difficult than the solo campaign. Now, let's tie these points together. On one hand, you have ample resources used to convey a buttload of cinematic flashiness. On the other, you have a complete lack of supposed endgame content for PvE StarCraft, nor cooperative campaigns of any kind. You have incredibly loyal fans, some of which are skilled yet unknown storytellers or map makers that would love an opportunity to stand in the spotlight. And with that, I ask the final question. Is the RTS genre ready to support long-term PvE endgame content at the same quality of a PvP experience? The correct answer is yes, I agree fully with this random person talking on YouTube right now. He's made a good point. That's it. Yeah.